All right, friends. This is week 9. We are continuing our lecture. This week, we're supposed to cover create and read. And so what we have done so far is we've created, we've been able to go into our MySQL workbench. We were able to create a new database. That database was called MovieDB, where we had some tables, some movies, and we were able to look at those. This is code from something else. Sorry. So we were able to create that, and now what we want to handle is being able to read the data that we've created, right? One thing that we'll kind of look at is how do we read all of them, and we're going to look at kind of different things that we can do. But we're going to kind of expand this out just a little bit, so that way we're going to kind of have I wouldn't say heavier day, but this is what it's going to end up looking like. Right? We right now just have sort of this form, but we're going to expand it to where whenever we create something, it's going to come here. So anybody want to give me a movie to kind of start out with?
How about Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Scott Pilgrim versus the world. Okay. Genre, would you say that's comedy or action?
Yeah, let's look at action comedy.
Action comedy. And do you know who the director is?
I believe it's Edgar Wright.
Edgar
WRI.
Wright. Like that?
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's right.
So when we submit, it's going to come right here. And so we're already seeing them all. And then what we'll be able to do is we will be able to click on it. We will show it. And then if we say edit, it takes us to an edited form. Now we're not going to do update and delete until next week. So we're not going to edit or worry about that. But this is what we're going to try to accomplish today. Again, all we've gotten to so far is this form. So we're going to build out all of this functionality, build out the functionality of when we click on this, we go and we get this information. And if we get to it, if we don't, it's okay. It's kind of my last, kind of on the last portion of importance. Or if we click edit, it brings up our edited form or updated form, and even populates all this information in there as well. So that's going to be what we do today. I know that we normally do algorithms on Thursday, but as we are getting into this, it was too heavy of information. I want to make sure you guys really understand it. And so we're going to go through the code again, just kind of a refresher, because this is stuff that's really important. Algorithms are going to be there. It's kind of another benefit, but this is going to be stuff that's really important. So I want to make sure that understanding this takes precedence over us doing an algorithm. Okay, great. Just as a reminder, discussion question, due Sunday, core assignment, due Sunday. I don't believe you guys actually have a core assignment due this week.
Is the Ninja Gold due this week?
So I believe Ninja Gold was due last week, technically. This is week 9. So Ninja Gold was due last week.
Oops.
But if you're okay, Graylin, no worries. If you haven't done it, this is why we give this extra week. It's quite a hard assignment. This is a week that you can catch up. So feel free to catch up and try to get Ninja Gold in. My encouragement too is if you get Ninja Gold in and done with what we've learned, maybe this week, with what we've learned today, or what we're gonna, have learned on Monday and what we're learning today, I would ask you to try to redo Ninja Gold, but add a database instead. Maybe have different users and you could track their money. I know a lot of you guys, again, have been asking, what are some projects I could do so that way I can enhance my learning, enhance my knowledge? Going back and doing stuff like Ninja Gold, but implementing it in a full stack way will be a great way for you to just get more practice when handling gold and when handling, or not gold, but when handling code and understanding, okay, how do we take this idea and flush it out even more, implementing the new technologies that we've learned. Cool. Great. So here's our code for what we've done. Just kind of going back through everything that we did, because we introduced a whole bunch of stuff on Monday. So I want to make sure that we are all up to speed, all taken care of. Our server PY shouldn't look super different. We have different app routes, right? With our app route decorator for the actual route itself. We did bring in the class. So in order for us to do things and use methods from the class, we have to import that from up here. We break this down when we're creating a new movie. its method is post. And we break out this data question. Now, there was a great question in office hour, kind of at the very beginning by Tenzin, asking, why can't we just pass in user or, request.form? You can, and especially for the user's assignment, you can do that. Now, what this allows us to do, and by breaking this out, though it might seem tedious and it might seem like more code, sometimes more code is more efficient than less code. What I mean by that is when we just pass in request.form, we're passing in all the information that maybe we don't need, right? So maybe we don't need certain things. Maybe there's hidden input files or hidden inputs that we don't need. And so it can kind of maybe mess up or alter our code. The other thing that this allows us to do is assure that the name from our form matches that of our actual attribute. So maybe in my form, I put f_name, but in my attribute on my actual model, maybe it's first_name. And in my database, it's first_name. If I just pass in the request.form, that's where that can get really confusing and it makes debugging a little bit more challenging. The other thing we have to think about when we're writing code is you can modularize or you can make your code, this is going to sound silly, too quote unquote efficient in the sense of you can have it all one line, but if it's really confusing and you're using nuance technology in that, we want to be able to write code that other developers can come, read, understand quickly, and implement a challenge. If you get a job as a developer, if that's the route you decide to go, most of the time you are not going to be writing new code from scratch. Now, if you go work at a startup or after you've been there for a little bit, maybe there's a new feature, sure. But what you will have is you will have some sort of code base, a mega code base, right? Especially if you go to a bigger company, you will have a code base with hundreds of pages and hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of code. You're going to need to be able to siphon through and understand what's going on. So when we're writing code, we want to write our code in such a way that people understand, okay, the data that we're passing in, this is the exact keys, this is the exact values that we're passing in, this is what we have access to. So just a little tidbit on why we break this down. Again, if you just did request.form, that might actually work. And I believe it shows you on the platform that way as well. But you can also, I would get in the habit of doing something like this, breaking it down so that way you have a better understanding of what's going on. And other people, when they're reading it, have a better understanding of what's going on. Cool. Back to our class, we created a class, right? We set up and said, okay, this is going to be a movie. And we've given the attributes of the class. We have an ID, created at and updated at. Those are kind of givens in my MySQL workbench. I don't have it open right now, but whenever we have created at and updated at, we do have our default expressions where we have current timestamp and current timestamp on update current timestamp. So because we have that, we don't have to pass in the values there, right? ID auto increments, so we don't have to pass in a value there. And because we did the default expression, when we were building out our actual database, we don't have to pass it in. Now, again, if we didn't have that, we would have to pass in a value for created at and pass in a value for updated at. And so we'd say something like this, right? So we're just given the current timestamp. Cool. Again, this is all just a refresher, but just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Everybody has a great understanding. So we created this class movie that imports from MySQL connection and imports connect to MySQL. And what this MySQL connection is this comes straight from the platform. And this is what connects our database. Can anybody tell me the two pieces of code that you might have to change? I know that there's only two places that you might have to change code. Where are those two places? Anybody remember?
The password.
And username.
And the user.
Exactly. If you have a different username than root, you want to put that there. If you have a different password, so typically on a Mac, we say to do root, because I think it has to be 8 characters. If you have anything different, you want to put those there. You shouldn't, after that, have to touch this file at all. This is a plug and play file. And then once if you are root and root, you just copy and paste. You're going to put that in every single project It's plug and play. This is what connects and allows us to do queries on our database utilizing PyMySQL.
So when we will be working with the organization, they will be giving us the user and password, or do we have to create our own?
So what you'll typically do, yeah, great question, because this is localhost. It will have an environment variable. So most of the time, what will happen is you won't even touch this file. This is set up by a database engineer or some sort of system engineer or definitely like a senior architect. You're not going to touch this file. If you need it, what will happen is you will have what we call an environment variable. And so they will share that with you. Or what will happen really is on your cloud, you can set up environment variables. So in AWS, you can set those up.
Mhm.
And then this will just refer to that there. And so you won't need to touch it. So you won't have to touch that. This is just for our local machine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't have an access to just transparently, you won't, unless you're like a startup and they just give you full control, which I don't suggest, especially to junior devs. But you won't have access to the password to the database because the database is their lifeblood, right? That's all their customers. That's all their everything. So there will be very few people who have that password.
Sure.
Yeah. Good question though. Again, that's all you're going to have to change. And so now that we've connected to the database, we can do certain things. So far, all we've done is created a class method saying, okay, we don't want to deal with a specific instance, but we want to say, what can this class do? Or what can instances of this class do? Or when we call it. And so far, we just have create movie, takes in CLS and data. Now this data comes from what we're passing in here, right? Which is our data. Now that word is just an arbitrary word. It doesn't have to be data. It can be anything you want. Keep it as data because again, we want other developers to be able to understand what we're trying to say, what we're trying to communicate.
Is
But that-
CLS class, what is the CLS?
Yeah, CLS is because this is a class method. CLS refers to the class attributes or being able to handle the class. So if it's an instance method, meaning that we're dealing with a specific instance, think back whenever we did like users and bank accounts, and you have a user who wants to add to their bank account, right? That's affecting just that specific instance. And so that's what we call an instance method, and that uses self. Because this is a class and the attributes of class, we use CLS. Anytime you have this decorator of class method, which most of your methods are going to be class methods, you're going to use CLS. If you don't have a decorator, it's self, or unless you do static, and static is just nothing. Here, what this method does is we have this variable called query. Again, this could be anything you want. It could be unicorn if you wanted. And we write our actual SQL query. Can anybody remember why we do this? What does this do? It protects us from something. What is that?
Is it a string operator?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
String operator?
Yeah, it's a string operator. It's a different form of string interpolation. And why do we do it this way? Why don't we just pass in and say all the information like normal? Why don't we just give it access to that?
We want people to be able to change it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Graylin, I see Kobe in the chat said SQL injections. Yeah, so there's this thing that happens called SQL injection. Again, where people can put in something like, I think there's one, if we were just to say this, and we have this value, somebody passes in something like this, they can get into your database and get some information, or something like this. If they were to say Joe email drop tables, this is a SQL query, right? This will happen. What this will do is this will delete all of your users. It'll delete all of your users. And so what this does, it allows us to not do that, and it'll just be read as a string, basically as the name. And so even if their email was like this would just go in what their email would, and SQL's not going to actually read that code, right? Because we don't want this. This is what that would do. So it's going to get all users were Joe at email, and then it runs the second one. So we want to prevent that from being able to happen. So give this a read through, the SQL injection portion on the code, and that'll help us And that'll maybe help you understand a little bit more about how that works. Cool. Cool. And then we run our connect to MySQL that we're bringing in from our MySQL connection. We give it our database. So this is the database that we're working with called MovieDB. We run the query DB, which is again a method coming from that from this right here. We run our query DB. And then once we do that, that's what's being returned. We return the value, which is just our created movie. And once that happens, we redirect and we go back to our HTML. Are there any questions? That's our recap of what we did. I know that it was a lot. So are there any questions on what we did, how we did it, why we did it, stuff like that?
Pretty good so far. Sounds like a lot of it is just remembering to label everything correctly and reference it with the exact right syntax. And
Mhm.
that's just going to require repetition, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Liam. 100%. Cool. So now what we want to do, like I said, is we want to be able to go through and see, we want to now retrieve this information from our database. We've been able to create, we've tested that, that works great. These are actually from our database. I added these two ones, or I added this one, and then we added this one today. But this was already in our database. So now we want to be able to go retrieve that information. So what we're first going to do, there's a couple different ways we can do this. I like to first set up my information. I like to set up I like to set up my functionality first and foremost, just because it helps me understand. Doesn't matter the path you do. So it doesn't matter if you do it first in movie PY and then server PY, and then you make your HTML. If you decide to make your HTML first and then your server PY and then your movie PY, the ordering doesn't matter. It is totally up to you. But when I'm making an exam, I like to go ahead, or when I'm, doing an exam or making a project, I like to go ahead and knock certain things out first. I like to start in movie PY. Again, totally up to you. So what we're doing is we're wanting to be able to show, and I think showing all movies is a great place to start. Now there's going to be a couple of different things we're going to accomplish to do, or try to accomplish, right? We want to be able to show them all, but we also want to be able to just see one. So if I say show, I want to be able to see just that specific movie. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to create a class method. And this class method is going to be called get all movies. Oops. So I'm going to call this def get all movies. And now I'm just going to use this code because this is correct. It is also reading. I've already written this code. So let's walk through everything that's happening here. I created this class method called get all movies. Again, this name does not matter. Get all movies could be unicorn and cupcake. It doesn't matter. It just describes what we're doing. So we want to be as descriptive as we can. This is a class method, so we know it takes in CLS. But in order for us to get all movies, we don't have to give any information, right? It's not required, so we don't have to pass in data. When we're trying to create something, we have to tell our database what we're trying to create. But when we're getting all movies, we don't really have to do that, right? We just need to get all of them, so we don't have to pass in any data. Similar to create movie, we have our query here, and our query is much simpler, right? Select all. Can anybody tell me what this does?
Everything in the
means,
database.
The wildcard?
The little star. Sorry, give me one more time.
Is it a wildcard operator?
Yeah, so what does it do?
It gives you everything in that table.
Yeah, it gives me every column, right? Every column gives me my ID. It gives me my, if we come here, it gives me my ID back, my title, my genre, my director, created at, updated at. If I just wanted the director, I could just put director here. Right? And that's going to give me just all directors for my movie, or just the director column. But we want to get all movies. We want every aspect of it so we could show it. So we do this little asterisk right here, and that's going to give me everything, right? Just like, so it said it's like a wild card, right? It just gets you everything. And then this is normal, right? This is what we've seen where we are connecting to MySQL. We're putting our database, which is MovieDB. We're running our query DB and our query. Again, we don't need to pass in any data because all we're doing is getting. But if you notice something unique, we're not returning this value here. Instead, what we're doing is we're getting results, right? We're getting the results back. Or we're creating a variable called results. Now, I think just for the sake of this, I want to be able to print results so that way we can see what's happening. And so we'll print results. We'll be able to see this. But what it's going to give me is all of my movies in a list, right? It's going to give me a list of objects back because that's what my get gives me. It gives me a list of my specific objects. Well, I want, there's a few things that we need to do with that. This is going to give me a list of objects, but it's just a specific object. If you remember when we were kind of dealing with code and it gave us back the tuples, right? We want to change and be able to affect our code in a correct way. Yeah, Graylin, go ahead.
Which phrase in here indicated that it was a get?
Just the great question. The select all from movies, our
Okay.
query itself
Okay,
is what indicates that it's a get.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. We know that we're going to call it a get, but it's the query that really runs everything. I could call this get all movies and run this query and it's still going to work because this name could be unicorn and cupcakes. It does not matter. It's the query itself that we're running. Cool. Now, I actually just want, let's do this. Because I want you guys to see what's going on here. Cool. Let's figure out a way that we can do get all movies. So I'm going to say at app.route movies. We can call it movies. That's fine. Get all movies, print movies. Cool. So we don't have this. We'll just say index.html. Let's do that for a minute. And it might error out. But really, I just want you guys to see what this prints and what we can do there. Okay, so let me bring this up. I'm going to kill the one that was working, the one that we showed. And let me start this one. So I'm going to say pip env shell. Cool. And then I'm going to say Python server.py. And we know that this is /movies. So when I go to localhost 5000, I get this. If I go to /movies, if I go to /movies, what this is going to do is it's going to run this method. It's going to create this variable, but really what's more important is it's going to run this, print movies, and it's going to render the HTML. So it shouldn't do anything really, but it's going to print what our results was, right? So it's actually going to double print that, but that's okay. So we'll say /movies. It brings us to the same space, but if I come here, we can see that I get all of this information, right? This is my result back. I have a list. And let me actually go in and I'm gonna change it because it's printing twice right now and I don't want it to, so I'm not gonna print here. Let's run that again. Go to clear. Refresh. Okay. So we come back to this. Let me make this bigger. But what we can see here is that this is our results that our database has given us back. It gives us back this list of objects or dictionaries, sorry. That's my first one, my second one, my third one, my fourth one, all through. It's just a list. You can see that the end bracket here and beginning. So I'm getting back this list, right? That's the method or the way that it's giving me information. Now, here's something that's very important, and I want to make sure that we distinguish and we know and we're aware of. You can, in theory, take this piece of information, take this list, maybe just return results, something like that, iterate through and be able to see this code. You can have that, you can iterate through on your HTML, and you can see this code. Now, we're not going to do that. We're going to do one more step, and I'll tell you why after we do that. We see here that I've got this, this little line of code here. What this is doing, and this is the way we want to handle this, is this is also, so let's get rid of that. This is creating a new list, a brand new list, right? Called movies. And we're saying for movie in results. So we are iterating through each dictionary in results. And it says movies.append. And this is the really important piece. We are then running CLS and movie. What this does is this takes our dictionary. So as a movie is, one dictionary and then another. It takes each dictionary and makes it an instance of our movie class. We are iterating through this list of dictionaries. We are adding a class instance of each dictionary to this new list called movies. And then we are returning movies. So we're returning our new list. Now, here's why this is really important. If we were just to leave it at results and I were just to return results, we are able to read that code just fine, right? We know how to do that. We can read it on the front end, fine. The power and what we get by creating this as a movie instance is movie instances have methods and functionalities that it can do, right? Right now we're creating movie, but we could have static methods. We could have things like just, if we wanted to combine, maybe we had a static method that combined, maybe it was director first name and last name, and that just kind of did some inner workings and did certain things, right? Did some more functionality. By creating this as a class instance, we regain the power of the class. So if we just left it as a dictionary, we can just read it. That's it. Our code can be read on HTML, cool, but it can't do anything in regards to what our movie class can do. It has no access to that. If we just add these 2 lines or 3 lines of code, what it does is it now gives each movie power or the power of the movie class. So again, if I had some sort of methods or some sort of variables or anything that was associated to my movie, now that we've done this, each instance, though it might look the same, it's still just a list of dictionaries. But instead of the dictionary, each one is a object or it's a movie object, not just a dictionary that you can read only. So you get all the power of that. I'm going to pause there because this is an important thing. Are there any questions on that?
So we can create multiple instances for one class, correct?
Yes, yeah. Remember, a class is just a blueprint, and then we're creating as many instances as we need. You can have tons of that, tons of movies out there.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? get some all goods, all goods. Cool. So now that we've done that, we're returning our new movies, right? Our new list, which is just a list of movie objects or movie instances. We still say movies, movie, get all movies, right? So we're still creating this method of slash movies. Cool. We're creating this variable of movies and we're saying, hey, it's equal to whatever this method returns. Well, this returns the new list of movie instances. So movie represents my list of movie instances. And so when I render template on index.html, my movies equals movies. So whenever I'm referring to it in Jinja, this is what I'm going to use on my HTML. Its value is this value right here. So this on this side could be unicorn if we wanted. And then on the HTML, we just refer to it as unicorn. But it doesn't necessarily make sense. So we say movies equals movies here. Now this is great because this is a route that goes and gets my movies, but I have to go to movies in order to get all my movies, right? And that's not what I want. I want whenever I get on my index.html, it automatically gets all my movies for me. So what I can do is I can actually make this code sort of, we can eliminate this entire method by doing something like this. Going up to my index. I'm going to say all movies. Now it's going to be equal to movie.getAllMovies. So we're sort of skipping the step here, right? Instead of creating this variable and then setting the variable equal to the variable, we know that movie.getAllMovies returns to me my list of instances. And because that's the case, all movies is just going to equal the list of instances. So now what this is going to do is on index.html, when this initial one is ran or any time we redirect to this value, we're going to index.html, we're going to get that, but we're also going to run this get all movies and we'll be able to show that on our HTML page. Any questions on how I turned this into this?
So for creating
So-
that, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, by doing it this way, all the movies would always be on the homepage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anytime we're redirecting back to home, it's going to automatically get all my new movies. What's nice about this is it means that anytime I create a movie and we redirect here, it's going to get all movies, including the one I just created. So we're always going to have an up-to-date list of movies versus having some other route that gets all the movies. Now, if I wanted to, right, let's say that I had a dashboard page. I didn't want to have that. I just had a welcome. And then I had a button that said all movies, and that's where I wanted it. That's where a second method would come in.
Okay. But what would that all movies right there, that in itself, where would that be, I guess, communing with? Because
And
I
so-
understand where the movie dot get all movies,
Mhm.
you know, I get that, but what about the all movies just in front of it?
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now.
Got
So
it.
I've got my movie database, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say dot row because I want this to all be in a row. Let me Control X. I'm going to put this under my I want it on the other side. So I'm going to put this under my, make sure my form. Cool. And so now I'm going to actually add that functionality. I'm just putting this in a row so that way they're side by side. But I want to add some sort of functionality. I'm going to say dot call medium for. That's some sort of div, right? And then maybe I've got an H2 that says movie list. And what I want to do is I want to interact. I don't want that. Is I want to interact with sorry, give me a second. Close my div. Cool. I want to be able to interact with my actual movies, right? And you asked a great question, Gregory. Where does this come in? This is what we're passing when we're on render template. This is something we are passing to our front end, right? Passing and making available to our HTML. So what I could do is I can go in and write some Jinja code that says something like this. I have my curly brackets, and I say for a movie in all movies. All movies is this value right here. So I'm saying, hey, I want to iterate through that. I'm going to call this movie. This could be unicorn, it could be cupcake. This is what matters. I'm iterating through all movies. What is all movies? All movies is a list of movie instances. Then this is just creating a card that maybe has the movie title. And then it's going to have movie genre, director. And that should be it. Yep. I think that's it for right now. And then let's close my divs. And I got one more, I believe. Div, close, close. Now, once that's done, I need to end my for loop. So I say end for. And this allows me to iterate through all movies using Jinja syntax. That's the curly bracket and the percent sign. My for loop statement, curly bracket, or sorry, percent sign, curly bracket, whatever my functionality is. Now, what this is doing is each time for each instance, it's applying this card, and this is all just Bootstrap stuff, card body to make it look nice. But we're able to say movie.title. And so what movie.title is us saying, okay, for that specific instance of the movie, what is its title? And we're able to grab that. What is its genre? What is its director? So let's spin this up. Or it's already spun up. If I refresh, we don't have /movies because I got rid of it. But now you see we've got, if I refresh, we have our title here, but then we also have this, all of our stuff from our database. We are iterating through. And if I were to add something, anybody want to give me a movie?
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer. Genre, drama?
Mhm.
Who's the director? I think it was somebody big. Christopher Nolan. Yeah, makes sense. Cool. Christopher Nolan. So when I click submit, what this is going to do is this form, I wanted to talk about it before, right? I'm clicking submit. The form goes to new movie. So it's going to go to my server. It's going to find, it's going to say, are you new movie? No, you're not. Let's go to the next one. Are you new movie? Yes, you are. Your method post. I have some information. It creates this data object or dictionary with these values here, which again come from my name aspect of each input. Then it runs create movie. So it goes into my database, creates the movie. It redirects back here and it goes, says, are you just /? Yes, you are. Cool. What do you want me to do? You want me to render template, index.html. Great. Oh, you want to create this variable of all movies? Let me run this query real quick. Gets all the information. And then it comes back to my HTML and says, hey, I have this all movies that you asked for. And it says, cool, go ahead and lay them out individually, just like this. And I'm also going to say margin top 3 to give them some space. So that's, and then once I click this, it should just go done. So it does it very, very fast, but that's the process of what it's doing. It's going to go and it's going to check, creates it, goes, sees, oh, I need this variable. Oh, I got to run this real quick. And then it goes and creates it again. I'm going to pause there. How are we feeling about this?
Good.
Good. Cool. Now, maybe we want to be able to create a button to actually see just specifically one movie, right? Just one movie. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to put that within this guy because we want it within each one. And I'm going to say an A tag. That's got an href of. Now we can create this whatever we want, but this is really, again, in our server py, where are we going to send this to? So we can say show movie. But I'm also going to need a piece of information for my database, right? If I want to get specifically one movie, what is my unique identifier? What is my piece of information that I need to pass through?
The movie title?
Not movie title, because sometimes movies can have the same title, right? There's two
ID?
Walter Mitty's. Yeah, your ID. Your ID, just as a reminder, your ID is always your unique identifier. You can sort of think about it if you've got if you have a social security number, that is yours, right? Nobody else in America should have that social security number. That's your unique identifier. IDs are always the same way. Well, when I'm getting this, if we were to go all the way back to this guy, we can see that I am getting that information, right? Right here, I have that information available to me. And we know that when we're selecting all from movies, we're passing that through. And when I have my all movies, I'm just creating a list of all movies, right? And it is we are making it a class instance, but we still have access to that value. So what I can do is in my actual href, I can say movie in the same way that I have this is movie dot ID. And this will make sure that I'm passing in and saying, cool, when I'm clicking on it, it tells our computer, this is the one we're clicking on. It's the one with this ID. And maybe I could just, I'm also going to say class, and then say BTN primary, just to make it blue. And then I'm going to say show movie. Cool. I come here and I refresh. Now we get this show movie. Now you can kind of see on the bottom left of my screen here, you can see that it's saying I'm going to go to show movie /1, which we know that this has an ID of 1 because it was the first movie we created. 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So you can see that, yes, this is working great. We're getting this unique identifier. And this is just really how everything works. If I were to come here and I hover over here, you can see that it's login.codingdojo.com/m 517-12988-91186. I come here, 91187. It's a unique identifier. This is what is allowing us, same sort of idea, that we're going to say, when I click this, go and retrieve the information for this specific, value, or for this specific ID, the value for this specific ID. Same sort of idea. But now I need to get the functionality to actually show that, right? So I need to go into my server PY, and I need to handle when somebody clicks on this route, what do we want to do? I go into my server PY. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to say app route. And what did I say it was? I said that it was show movie. Now, what I also need to do is I also need to prepare my route and say you are expecting a value that we're going to, and what we're going to refer to it as. So my route parameter is of type int. It's an integer. We know that. I'm going to call it just ID. What I call this here is what I can refer to it as in my actual method. Somebody said, great question on the index.html. I see that your Ginger syntax isn't the same on the same indent. It obviously doesn't affect the functionality, but enclosed, but could it? So no, index.html, HTML does not follow the same code spacing. Great question, as Python. Python, it's really important that it's, because that's how it differentiates. It's what we call scope. So is it within an if statement? Is it within a loop, et cetera, et cetera? HTML, in theory, you could have all HTML on one line. It would be disgusting looking, but you could have it all on one line. It would still work. So great question, but no, these don't have to be on the same line. Now you can, if you were like, yeah, just makes it look nice. That's great. You can do that.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, my pleasure. And again, what we call this here, we're saying, hey, you're expecting some integer, right? This was what makes it dynamic. You're expecting some sort of integer. We're going to refer to that as ID. Cool. So we're going to say, I'm going to call this def show movie. And we're saying in order for this to run show movie, we need to have an ID, right? In order for us to show the specific movie with that ID, we need to have access to that. Well, we do, because in my route or in my, in my route, I have that. So I'm just going to take that information here. Cool. Now, in the same way where we can grab some information, or in the same way that we break this out, we can do the same thing, right? Get in the habit of breaking out this information. We're taking it and making sure that, okay, this key of ID is ID, and that's passing in through here. Perfect. Now we want to get off of this index.html page. When we click on this, we want to show just a page with that movie in itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to render template. I haven't created this HTML page. I'm going to need to do that. But we also are going to create a new method within my movie PY called get movie, right? We currently have get all movies, but now we need to create the functionality that, hey, if I just want one movie, how does that work? And in order for us to do that, we're going to need some data or an ID, right? And so we just pass that in. Cool. So let's tackle this portion first, and then we'll go build out our HTML page. So we have get all movies, we have create movie. We're just going to have get movie. It's a class method. And I'm going to do this here, and we'll walk through it. Now get movie is a class method. So we take in CLS and we have some data that we're passing in, right? We're passing in the ID so that way we have access to it. Then we're running a query, but now we're adding a condition. So we're saying get all from movies where, and this where is what allows us to just say, just give me every column for movies, but only for the instance where the ID matches the ID being passed in. This ID comes from right here. This is going to return to us another list of a dictionary in the same way that this returned a list of dictionaries. It's exactly what this is doing. Now, again, we want to make sure that we have the instance, or we want to have a class instance of my piece of information. Now, because SQL returns just a list, we don't care about that. We just want one, right? When we're dealing with IDs, we just want the one that has the ID. So this will return, unless something has the same ID, but without an increment, that's not going to happen. It still returns a list. And so what this line of code is doing right here is it's saying results at position 0. Results is going to be a list of one object or one dictionary. But we could still say results of 0 is just saying get that first one, the only one, but get it. And I want you to make a class instance of it. Again, now this gives us the power of movie versus just the readability of a dictionary. And that's all it's doing is it's returning that one specific instance of movie. But it's doing it as it instantiates it in a movie class. Any questions on that? Okay. The last thing we need to do, so we've handled this portion. Now you can see that this is yellow because we have get movie. We need to create this show movie.html. So I'm going to go into my templates. I'm going to say show underscore movie.html. Now I love Bootstrap. And so if you are, if you are kind of like me, I don't like having to repeat myself or do sort of the same things over and over and over again. So I'm bringing in Bootstrap, but notice we already currently on index.html are showing our movies in a nice way, right? Okay, this looks nice. So maybe I want to show it in the same way, but I just want to show the one movie. Well, what I could do, and this is totally okay, is I can take the code that I've already written, come here. I'm going to say .container because that is what is needed for Bootstrap. Let's try it again. Cool. I'm going to paste my code. And now we just have to make sure this is movie, movie, movie. What was passed in? This is movie right here. If I called this one movie right here, then in my show HTML, this would need to say one underscore movie dot title, one underscore movie dot genre, one underscore movie dot director. We don't need to show movie. Because I just called it movie, I refer to it as movie here. And now we check our server. It's not running.
Hey, Will,
Yep.
are we missing for loop?
We are not missing for loop. We're just doing one. So we don't need to iterate through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, in my server py, it is /show movie. Come up. Cool. So if I refresh, great. Now, if I click on this, it takes me to another page that has a card that's just that movie, that specific movie. I come here, we go just to Fast and Furious. If I go Oppenheimer, we go strictly there. Now, the reason we didn't have to iterate through is because here we have a list of movies, right? A list of movie instances. And so in order for me to see them individually, we need to say, hey, I want you to iterate through that. And for each one, create a card and a card body. And that's what is this, right? I'm iterating through this, the first one, and it creates all this information. Once that is done being created, it goes on to my next movie, creates a card, adds the information, adds the button. Once that's done, it goes on to my next movie. That's why we have a list, and that's why we're iterating, that's why we're iterating through on my index.html. We have a for loop or an and an end for loop. Because we're just showing one, we don't need to iterate through. And we have that information at movie. And it's not a list, it's just a singular instance. So I can refer to that just as like I would, when I'm dealing with classes, as movie.title, movie.genre, movie.director. Now, if this was one movie, or sorry, if this was multiple movies, let's say that I said, get me all movies that start with W. And I had multiple, that's where I'd need to iterate through. But because we're just dealing with one instance of the movie, we don't need to iterate through that. And I can just grab that information, say movie.title, movie.genre, movie.director. Now I have access to the two other things, right? I could say P-class dot, card text. And I could say movie dot created at. I could say updated at. And I could even say, you could say ID or whatever. So now if I save this and I refresh, we have all this information. We just chose just to show these three things, but because we have this class instance, we have access to our ID or created at or updated at anything that's within my database, I'm grabbing that. Strictly because my query in my movie says select all. This gives me every single column. I'm going to pause there. Actually, I'm going to end there. Are there any questions in what we did? Anything that doesn't make sense? Anything I can help with?
So when we choose index ID, how do we add it into our classes?
So you don't have to.
Oh, I don't have to. Okay.
Yeah, so ID auto increments, if we whenever we were building it in
Mhm.
MySQL, if we click the AI, it automatically increments. You don't have to do that. In the same way that when we built it in MySQL, if we put the default expression for current timestamp and current timestamp on update current timestamp for these two,
Mhm.
you don't have to pass that in when created. If we did not put that default expression, then we would have to put a value for created at and updated at. We'd
Oh,
have
I
to put
see.
that in here like this. Let's say that we didn't, we'd put this. That
Okay.
would then give a value when it's created. But because we put that when we first engineered it, that's why we don't have to pass in created at and updated at. So I think on the platform, you'll see it as comma now. That's because they didn't put the default expression there.
Okay. So default is created at and updated at without mentioning now, right?
Well, so let's just kind of come here real quickly. Let's say that I had a new table and I had an ID that's primary key, not null, and AI. Once I click that AI, I don't have to touch it.
Mhm.
If I have a created at, that's of type date time, and an updated at, that's also a date time. If I left it like this, I would then need to go into my code and I'd need to put a value here. I'd put created at and updated at as I'm inserting into that column. And then I would put comma now. Comma now. If I left it as is, like this, with nothing in this default value,
Mhm.
this is how I would have to handle an insertion or any sort of creation. I'd have to pass those. I'd have to then give a value for those attributes.
Okay, that makes sense.
If I come here and I right click and I say current timestamp,
Mhm.
and I come to this updated at right click and I say current timestamp on update current timestamp.
Mhm.
Once I put that, I no longer have to put this information. So it's totally up to you on what you do. Both are fine. Both will work the exact same way. This is just less code, but it totally depends. If you have the default expression, it will handle that for you. Just like you see here. If you don't, then you have to actually pass it in when you're creating a movie.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anything else, friends?
I'm all good.
Cool. Does this make sense? Are you guys following along? I know that we sort of jumped Robert left, right when we jump real quickly up, but are we understanding this? Does this make sense?
It makes a lot of sense when you're showing it, definitely. But I think you just need some review to really get it to stick.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, this is a practice thing. And then the good news is this is what we're doing from now on. We're just continuing to build this out. And so we'll keep going through. Remember, we do this and this and this and this, and we'll just keep building that out.
Yeah, I think we just need a ton of exposure to it. Repetition's key.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
again, everything seems easy when you're doing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when I take a swing at it, I'm like, oh, wait, what was that?
Yeah, totally.
So,
And that's why I decided to forego an algo today, because I wanted to make sure that we really understand this and take our time going through like, this is what we did last time. This is, this is how we're creating it. And that's probably depends on how we're picking it up and putting it down, right? But updated at and created and delete are much updated at's challenging. Delete's much harder. So, or sorry, delete's really easy. Updated at is not hard, but it's going to take a little finesse. So we should be able to knock both of those out. And so maybe next Thursday we'll have an algo. But for right now, we're okay with, we just had to do quite a bit this week. So wanted to make sure that we're all prepared.
yeah,
Cool.
I guess I'll just have to watch the videos, rewatch it, because, I kind of zone out a bit
Sure.
just because there's like so much,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Working through it, trying to create it, trying to recreate this. And again, like I said, going through and now trying to do Ninja Gold. All you need to do is create and read. If you wanted to move ahead and do update and delete, or delete really, because you don't need to update anything on Ninja Gold. You can really just create and read, and then you're good. Try to go do that with this. That'd be great practice over this weekend. So easy way to get repetitions. So cool. Well, I will stop the recording there. Are there any other questions